A memorial page appears on Facebook. The headline is short, R.I.P. Anja Weløy Aarseth. It's created by her friends and classmates in the first days after she goes missing. Photographs, words of support for the family, warm memories of a young woman who had just turned 21. Among the hundreds of grieving people who hit like on that page, there is one profile. An ordinary man, 24 years old, living in the same town. At that moment, his name means nothing to anyone. The police don't yet know who he is. Within a few days, this same man will be detained on suspicion of being involved in the death of the very girl whose memorial page he had liked. The story unfolds in Ålesund, a Norwegian port city on the western coast, around 50,000 residents, quiet streets, fjords, Art Nouveau architecture. A modest mountain rises above the town, Aksla, a lookout point with a view of the sea and the skerries. The trail to the top is considered an easy walk. Families with children take it, retirees with hiking poles, runners after work. Anja is a student at the local college in her second year. She plays for a women's football club in Bergen. The day after she disappears, she's supposed to fly to her boyfriend. She won't get there. And behind all of it, there's a like on her memorial page, left by a person connected to what happened. The region is Møre og Romsdal. The town is small, surrounded by water on every side. Loud, dramatic events are rare here. Local papers can write about the port, about fishing, about a new ferry for weeks on end. By crime statistics, Norway sits steadily in the top 5 safest countries in the world. People don't lock their bikes on the street. Children walk to school on their own. Anja Weløy Aarseth is originally from Bergen. She moves to Ålesund for her studies. She enrolls at Høgskolen i Ålesund in shipping and logistics. The town is a port city. The field fits it naturally. Housing is simple. Anja lives with her grandmother. It's more convenient and calmer for everyone. She doesn't stop training. She keeps playing for the women's football club Bundes IL in Bergen, traveling there for matches. Her boyfriend also stays in Bergen. The relationship is serious. By the end of August, they've already agreed on a weekend together. The plane ticket has been bought. Going for a run on Aksla is part of her routine. The route is familiar, the trail isn't long, there are always people on it. A warm August, bright evenings, someone is always on the slope. The people of Ålesund come out here with dogs, with strollers, in running gear. In a town like this, at a time like this, the thought that something terrible could happen on this trail feels almost impossible. Norwegian daily life is built in a way that pushes such thoughts away at the level of habit. Within a few days, that habit will crack. Wednesday, the 28th of August, 2013. An ordinary school day. 6:15 in the evening. A surveillance camera at the Fagerlia kindergarten records a Toyota Yaris. The car belongs to Anja. This is the last frame in which her vehicle is moving. According to investigators, over the next 45 to 75 minutes, she parks, changes clothes, and sets off for her run. Her direction is westward, toward the trail leading up Aksla. The route is familiar, the pace calm. She has her phone, she's in running gear. At home, they're expecting her for dinner. Tomorrow, the ticket to Bergen. Her grandmother is making food as always. On Anja's desk lie her notebooks, an open laptop, a half-finished outline on logistics. Everything is arranged as if this is just an evening like any other. And somewhere on that same trail or near it, there is another person. 24 years old, with a long criminal record. Episodes of violence, threats, drugs. The court will later establish that he was there. But at 6:15 in the evening, neither of these two knows that their paths are about to cross. The trail keeps breathing its ordinary life. Other runners go up and come down. A few people will later tell the police they saw a young woman in running gear, but no one will be able to pin it down to an exact time or an exact spot on the route. Anja sets off on the trail, and within a few steps, she vanishes from the field of documented knowledge. From that moment until she is found, almost 3 days will pass. Late evening, the 28th of August. Anja doesn't come back. Her grandmother starts calling. The phone doesn't answer. It's the first uneasy feeling, not yet fear, more like confusion. Anja always picks up. She always lets people know. She went out for a run, like she had dozens of times. Her car is parked where she usually leaves it. Her keys and bag aren't nearby. At first, there are guesses. Maybe she's running late. Maybe her phone died. Maybe she ran into friends. By night, it becomes clear that something is wrong. The The family files a report with the Sunnmøre Politidistrikt, the Sunnmøre Police District. Norwegian police respond quickly. There's no 3-day waiting rule here. In this region, the disappearance of a young woman on a popular city trail immediately falls into the serious category. The first search groups go out onto the trail the same night. They light up the slopes with flashlights, walk the area around the parked car, question anyone still out for a walk. None of the people questioned remember anything unusual. No screams, no sounds of a struggle, no strange figures. The trail that evening looks like hundreds of other evenings. That's exactly what's frightening. Investigators start to feel that whatever happened in a single moment, very fast, with no witnesses. In the first hours, the theories are wide open. An injury on the route, getting lost, a sudden health problem, a spontaneous trip somewhere. The police aren't ruling anything out yet, but in the chests of those close to her, there is already a feeling that doesn't yet have a name. By the morning of the 29th of August, it's clear that one family and one patrol aren't enough. The first large search group sets out on the trail. That's the start of an operation Ålesund hasn't seen in many years. On the 29th and 30th of August, around 300 people are working on the slopes of Aksla. 80 volunteers, about 100 members of Heimevernet, the Norwegian Home Guard, the country's territorial defense, something like an organized reserve force called in for major searches and emergencies. Red Cross teams are working, dog handlers with specially trained dogs. A police helicopter is sent up from Oslo. For a missing person of this profile, the helicopter doesn't get lifted often. It's a signal that this case is serious. For these 2 days, Ålesund lives on one topic. Photos of Anja are printed in the local papers, on websites, on social media. Her face is recognized on the streets. Search groups comb the trail, the slopes, the brush, the bushes on both sides of the route. People come on their own, without being asked. Neighbors, classmates, total strangers. Some bring coffee and sandwiches. Some grab a backpack and head toward the mountain. In the conversations out loud, people hold on to the theory of an injury on the slope. Maybe she slipped, lost consciousness, slid down into an unseen hollow. Maybe she's lying just off the trail and just needs to be found. That hope lasts 2 days. The police, in the meantime, are running a different line of work. They study the camera footage, they question her circle, they reconstruct her last messages, calls, movements. Anja turns into a case, a folder, a timeline of locations. But for her grandmother, she stays the granddaughter who promised to come home for dinner. By Saturday, it's becoming clear that the injury theory doesn't really hold. Everything on the slopes that could be combed has been combed. And then, just a few meters from a well-checked stretch of the trail, the thing that turns the whole case around takes place. Saturday, the 31st of August, around 1 in the afternoon. A police dog reacts to a scent a few meters from the popular trail up Aksla. A few meters, across which dozens of people walk every day. Anja's body is found right next to the route. Not deep in, not far away, not in some hard-to-reach spot. According to investigators, signs of a struggle are documented, along with circumstances pointing to the criminal nature of what happened. This is no longer a disappearance. This is a homicide case. The police cordon off the area. Forensic teams start their work. Every blade of grass, every footprint, every object nearby is potential evidence. On the 3rd of September, the authorities officially confirm what the town has already been whispering. The woman found is Anja Weløy Aarseth, 21 years old, a student. Ålesund takes a blow it isn't ready for. A young woman has died on a run in daylight hours, in a popular area, a few minutes' walk from residential blocks. The Norwegian media, VG, Aftenposten, NRK, the regional Sunnmørsposten, put the case on their front pages. A first kind of fear settles into the air in a thick layer. The person responsible for the attack still hasn't been identified. The identity is unknown. The motive isn't clear. In the evenings, the trail up Aksla empties out. People cancel their runs, stop letting their children out alone, keep their dogs on a short leash. The police shift the investigation into drapsack mode, the Norwegian term for a homicide case. From this point on, there is one priority. Identify the person involved as quickly as possible. In Ålesund, people start speaking more quietly and looking more carefully at their neighbors. In the first hours, investigators build a working hypothesis. By the nature of the attack and the location, This isn't a prepared ambush, it's a sudden encounter. Version number 1 is what Norwegian law calls rovmord, an attempted robbery that turns violent. According to the prosecution, the attacker may have acted on impulse and met resistance. Alongside that, they work the version of a random encounter with an aggressive stranger, no rational motive at all. Standard procedure. Check those closest to her first. The boyfriend in Bergen, the family, classmates, football coaches, alibis, movements, relationships, the latest conversations. No leads. The boyfriend is hundreds of kilometers away on the day she disappears. The family is at home. The classmates are at lectures or at home. The inner circle is ruled out almost immediately. That's rare in homicide cases, and for investigators, it's an important sign. The person involved is most likely a stranger to Anja. The cameras near the Fagerlia kindergarten and the approaches to the mountain become the key material. Analysts go through every recording, frame by frame. The witness interviews widen. Everyone who was on Aksla on the evening of the 28th of August is tracked down and questioned. A version comes up that the attacker is a local, someone who knows the trail well, knows where there are the fewest cameras, knows how to leave without drawing attention. Forensic specialists are working at the site where the body was found. Clothing, soil, traces nearby, and here the main technical lead appears. Biological material suitable for DNA analysis. This is the thread along which most high-profile cases of this kind are solved. The sample is sent to the lab. In parallel, the Sunnmøre police prepare a backup scenario, a voluntary collection of samples from all men in the contact zone. Under Norwegian law, this is permitted, but it requires enormous coordination and a lot of money. Norway rarely goes that route. In this case, it doesn't come to that. Another move works faster. The sample from the case is sent for comparison against Norway's central DNA registry. The registry is a database holding profiles of people who have previously been involved in criminal cases, mainly for violent crimes and drugs. A profile is added there after certain convictions and stays in the system for decades. It's a routine procedure. Every case of this type goes through it. Most of the time, it produces nothing. In this case, it produces everything. A match is found. The system already has a profile of a 24-year-old man with an extensive record. The name on file at that point is Stephen Dan Paco Danielson. The list of documented episodes goes back to his teenage years. Threats, use of force, drugs, run-ins with police. He had served time. He was living without a permanent registered address on social assistance in the Skarbøvik district of Ålesund. The police get the match and understand that they need to move fast and quietly. The suspect is placed under surveillance. The arrest is prepared without noise so as not to give him a chance to disappear, throw out evidence, or leave the region. From the moment the body is found to the moment a specific name is identified, only a few days pass. For a case of this kind, that's very fast work. And during all of this, the suspect himself doesn't leave the town. He doesn't know that the DNA registry has already turned against him. Or he knows, but for some reason he stays. What he does during these days will become partially clear from the case files later, and one of those episodes will pull the story in its own direction. While investigators are preparing the arrest, a detail comes up in the case file that will later become one of the most discussed in the Norwegian media. We come back to that same memorial page on Facebook. By the end of the first week of September, there are already hundreds of marks on it. Condolences, photos of her smile, memories, words of support for her family. Each like is a sign of grief, a sign of connection, a way of being close to those who lost her. Among those marks is the profile of Stephen Dan Paco Danielson, the very man the DNA has already pointed investigators toward. This has been confirmed by several Norwegian sources: VG, Aftenposten, Sunnmørsposten, NRK. The police log this digital trace as part of the investigation. The like by itself is not direct proof of guilt, but it is a powerful behavioral marker. In the view of experts, this is the behavior of a person who, according to the prosecution, has a direct connection to what happened, even if it's expressed in a single click of a mouse. The motive behind the gesture is an open question: brazenness, a wish to dissolve into the crowd of mourners and in that way deflect suspicion, an impulsive move with no calculation behind it. some form of unhealthy curiosity. Experts will later unpack this episode as an example of how people involved in a crime sometimes engage with public memorials of the victim, now in the digital space as well. In Norwegian criminology, this case will become one of the most cited illustrations of that kind of behavior. In court, the defendant himself will not say a single sentence about this like. He will say very little at all. But the click has already been made, and it doesn't get erased from the record. A few days later, this same man will be arrested a few blocks from the place where Anja set off on her run. Wednesday, the 4th of September, 2013, evening. A police operation in the Skarbovik district of Ålesund. Stephen Dan Paco Danielsen is detained without resistance. No chase, no shouting, no struggle during the arrest. The Norwegian police carry it out neatly, without unnecessary noise in the streets. The basis for the arrest is the match between DNA from the central registry and material recovered at the place where the body was found. From the moment the body is found to the arrest, 4 days pass. From the moment Anja disappears, 8. For a case of this scale and character, that's very fast clearance. Ålesund learns the suspect's name from the news. The story becomes the lead across all of Norway. The town partially exhales. The threat has been localized. The trail up Aksla no longer carries the same dread. But the shock over who exactly turned out to be the suspect only grows. A detailed picture emerges as background is checked. Threats to kill a former partner, her son, and a police officer. Episodes involving the use of force, drugs. 90 days in prison from a previous episode. At the time of the arrest, no permanent registered address, living on social assistance, moving between places to sleep. Among the questions journalists are asking is, how did a man with this kind of background end up moving freely in August 2013? And why didn't anything stop him sooner? The prosecution files a motion for pretrial custody. The court grants it. The defendant remains in detention. The trial is several months away. And in exactly that period, something will happen that doesn't usually happen in Norwegian criminal cases. December 2013. The suspect officially changes his name. Stephen Dan Paco Danielsen becomes Ragnar Dan Danielsen. His lawyer confirms the fact of the name change. The reason is not made public. Norwegian media discuss this step separately. A name change by a person awaiting trial for homicide is uncommon. Usually people do this to distance themselves from their own reputation, from their past, from search results online, from associations with relatives. The prosecution and the defense are assembling materials for the trial. The prosecution is led by Ingvild Thorn Norheim, an experienced prosecutor handling serious cases in the region. The defendant is charged on several counts: homicide, an act of sexual violence as part of the crime, and attempted robbery. A psychiatric evaluation is ordered. The question of criminal responsibility becomes one of the central ones. The kind of penalty that can be applied depends on its outcome. The experts reach their conclusion. The defendant is criminally responsible. He understood what he was doing. He is answerable for his actions. At the same time, they document a severe personality disorder and a behavioral disorder. The experts also record a phrase that carries particular weight in Norwegian law: a close risk of recurrence. That means the probability of him committing a similar crime again in the future is assessed as high. This phrasing isn't a sentence in itself, but it opens the door for the prosecution to request forbearing, a special protective measure used only in the most dangerous cases. Out of pretrial detention, the defendant walks into the courtroom no longer as Stephen, but as Ragnar, with a new name, a long file, a documented diagnosis, and a charge that carries the maximum sentence the Norwegian system knows. The 12th of February 2014, the courtroom of Sunnmøre Tingrett, the Sunnmøre District Court. The opening of the trial, in a case the Norwegian press has already labeled Aksla drapet, the Aksla killing. In the room, Anja's relatives, journalists, observers. The defendant is wearing a cap. He refuses to take it off, even though that's required. He refuses to stand for the reading of the charges. He refuses to give testimony on the substance of the case. His line of defense is silence. This is a rare model of behavior in Norway. Usually defendants in trials like this at least try to build a version of events, to justify themselves, to explain. Not here. The only thing that comes out of his mouth is his own statement that during those days he was supposedly in an altered state for 14 days in a row. In the prosecution's assessment, this is an attempt to lift part of the responsibility in advance. The defense puts forward another version. According to the defense, the crime was carried out on someone's order. That is, the defense suggests that someone allegedly paid the defendant to attack Anja. The prosecution looks into this version seriously. Financial flows, contacts, the victim's environment, the defendant's circle. Nothing is found. No money trail. No connection between Anja and any criminal world. No motive on the part of any potential client. The court rejects the contract killing version as unsupported. The prosecution's evidence base is built tightly. DNA at the scene, behavioral markers in the days after the disappearance, the psychiatric report, the lack of an alibi, a series of digital traces. On the 17th of February, Prosecutor Norheim requests 21 years of forbearing, the maximum measure available for these charges. The courtroom listens in silence. Anja's family listens in silence. The defendant in his cap says nothing. The 3rd of March, 2014. Sunnmøre Tingrett delivers its verdict. The penalty? 21 years of forbearing, with a minimum term of 10 years. Guilty on all counts. Homicide, an act of sexual violence as part of the crime, and attempted robbery. A word here on what forbearing actually is, because without that, the Norwegian system looks softer than it really is. Forbearing is a special protective measure. Formally, the upper limit is 21 years. But it isn't classic imprisonment. Forbearing can be extended by the court as many times as needed, for as long as the person is considered a threat to society. The decision to extend or not is made by the court, based on the risk of recurrence and behavior in detention. The minimum term of 10 years is the period before which any question of early release isn't even considered. In other words, the formula 21 with a minimum of 10 means 10 years for certain, and after that, as long as the system still sees a danger. September 2014. The appellate court, Frostating Lagmannsrett, upholds the verdict. All the main arguments of the defense are rejected. The contract-killing version is once again ruled unproven. The family and those close to Anja receive what, in Norwegian law, counts as the most severe possible response to this kind of crime. After the appeal, the case is closed into the archive. The defendant goes into a facility where people serve forbearing, and there he will spend exactly as long as the Norwegian system considers safe for everyone else. 2023. 10 years of the minimum term have passed. Under Norwegian law, this is a scheduled point at which the convicted person can file a motion for early release. Under the name Ragnar Dan Danielsen, he files that motion. That doesn't mean he has to be released. It only means that the question can be raised. The materials covering the full period of detention are studied by both the prosecution and the court. Behavior, evaluations by psychologists, the risk of recurrence, the development or persistence of the disorder, the experts documented back in 2014. The prosecution argues against release. The court agrees. The motion for early release is denied. The basis, the assessment of danger and behavioral disorder, still stands. That very phrase, a close risk of recurrence, hasn't gone anywhere. With this decision, the measure shifts from theoretical to actually ongoing. The date of the next review point is set by the court. Until then, the convicted person remains in the facility under the same conditions. Anja's family gets an important confirmation. Their loss isn't being reopened. Their memory of her isn't being turned into a backdrop for a new trial, for an interview with the convicted man, for a debate about his new life. None of that. At this stage, the Aksla case becomes, in a final way, one of the teaching cases of Norwegian criminology and criminal procedure. Through it, students at Norwegian law schools study how the combination of the central DNA registry, fast operational response, and forbearing as a long-term measure all work together. Ålesund, after 2013 shifts in the way its residents see their runs up Aksla. Over time, informal memorials appear on the trail, flowers on anniversaries. A quiet, thanks to those who searched for her in August of that year. Anja's family publicly avoids interviews. That is the Norwegian tradition of protecting the private space of those harmed, and it works strictly here. They don't comment, they don't give on-camera interviews, they don't go on the air. Their grief stays their own. The boyfriend from Bergen, the one Anja was about to fly to the next day, remains one of the few who spoke at all in the first weeks after the tragedy. A few words about who she was, a few words about what they had been planning. And that's it. After that, silence. The football club, Bonus IL, honors her memory. Her name stays in the team's archives, in the memories of coaches and teammates. In the Norwegian press, the case comes back from time to time. Anniversaries, discussions of forbearing as a measure, the theme of digital traces left by offenders. The episode with the like is discussed in podcasts, in coursework on criminal psychology, in materials for future investigators, as an illustration of how those involved in a crime behave when the case enters the public arena. In Ålesund itself, nothing on this scale has happened since 2013. Aksla fills up again with runners and tourists. Life moves on. But that life carries a thin memory now, that something like this is possible here too. The internal reviews inside the police after the case all touch on one practical task: how to shorten the hours between a missing person report and an actual name the next time around. The Aksla Drappet case is solved. It has been through 2 judicial instances. The forbearing sentence stands. The main facts confirmed by the court. The perpetrator is identified, the DNA matched, the psychiatric assessment is on record, the appeal was rejected, the motion for early release was denied. The main theory of motive is rovmord, which in Norwegian law refers to a chance attack aimed at robbery, with violence applied. The court accepted it as the leading version. The defense's version about a contract killing was dismissed as not supported by evidence. The exact seconds and minutes of what happened on the trail are known to only one person. That person has not given any consistent testimony. Not at trial, not since. The central behavioral paradox, the like on the memorial page, is documented, but psychologically still not fully explained. It remains an open question, one for which there is no answer in the case files. Anja Weløy Aarseth, 21 years old, from Bergen. A student in shipping and logistics, a footballer, a daughter, a granddaughter, a young woman with a ticket booked for the next morning's flight to her boyfriend. Her story isn't only the story of one crime and one sentence. It's a reminder of how thin the line is between an ordinary evening route and something that changes a town for years to come. In this case, the Norwegian legal system worked the way it was designed to work. It identified, it convicted, it protected the memory. After that, silence, in which everyone decides for themselves what they take away from this story.